my heart, please. Oh my gosh, challenge. Just beat me over the head with the emotions. Why don't you? Plus, it's prom night and Tundra is here, and Tundra is also probably prom queen. Derrick and Jodi remember very quickly how not fun winning can sometimes be. Tragedy strikes in the challenge family. Nehemiah is on one, and Ayanna be putting in that work. It's the challenge All Stars 2 Episode 2 recap coming up right now. Welcome to The Challenge Historian, where we dive deep into all things MTV's The Challenge, past, present, or future. If it's happening in the Challenge universe, then we are here to document it. I am your host and dedicated Challenge historian, Jacob Hollaball. Thank you so very, very much for being here with us today. On today's podcast, we are discussing, we are hopefully able to talk on today's podcast. That would be good. We are discussing All Stars 2, Episode 2. It was another wonderful installment of All Stars. The success rate of this show, episode by episode, is just through the roof, and they're doing it again with the second season, an awesome premiere, now an awesome second episode as well. That will be the focus of today's pod. As always, quick programming reminder, if you are looking for some Spies, Lies, and Allies content, that came out a few hours ago. You can still go listen to that. We recapped episode 15. We've got double challenge goodness for a 5-week stretch here. Both shows going at the same time. So we're recapping both individual podcasts. We are previewing both of them in one podcast, mega podcast on Tuesdays. So this is the third and final podcast of this week. Next week, and for the at least 4 more weeks or so, there will be the 3 pods a week format to this show, recapping both seasons, previewing both all in one episode. So that's where we're at in the past, in the present, and in the future of this podcast. Otherwise, the house has already been really kept. There's no real housekeeping notes to say other than thanks as always for being here. And if you want to make sure you're not missing anything, hit that follow or subscribe button. And even more so, even better than that, if you've already done that, go on over to Instagram, follow us at Challenge Historian on Instagram, so that any extracurricular content we're putting out there outside of this podcast feed, you're hitting that up too. You're getting to see that and follow along there, and we're going to try to start making that we're going to start using it a lot more, but also we're going to try to make this an interactive thing moving forward. So that'll be the place where most of that interaction takes place. So follow us on Instagram at Challenge Historian, hit subscribe, follow to this podcast feed. And other than that, why don't we go ahead and actually talk about this fantastic episode 2 of All Stars 2. We will use the same format today for the most part that we did last week, and that we've kind of adopted not just for this show, but also in our Spies, Lies, and Allies format. That is, we will first do our Cliffnotes recap, everything that took place in the episode, just to refresh our brains on everything we just saw. Follow that up with a walk through the storylines of the episode. Last week we said 5 big things to talk about. We're not going to limit it to 5. We're not going to force it to be 5 if there's not 5 this week. There actually happens to be 5 people or things we want to kind of talk about. So that segment will be just kind of the storylines. Beyond that, we'll hand out some hardware. We'll hand out awards for the best fit of the episode, which the outfits played a kind of key role, or one outfit played a very key role in this episode. Then best moment, best quote, and an episode MVP, before finally updating our power rankings and adding a new prediction to our list of season-long predictions. It's a lot to get to, so let's get on started and head right on in to that Cliff Notes recap. Starting us off with our Cliff Notes recap, everything that just happened on this great episode 2 of All Stars 2, as quickly as we can, running through the plot of the episode. While, as far as the season advancing forward in this episode, it was another kind of half episode in the terms of our regular structure of a challenge episode, being some house time, a daily challenge, some house time, and elimination. Episode 1 and 2. Episode 1 had the daily. Episode 2 has the elimination. We will see if that will be the way it moves moving forward. For one, and I believe a lot of fans are probably perfectly content with the more you give us of them at the house, them doing things like having prom night, the better. But doesn't mean there wasn't a lot packed into this episode. So let's recap it all now as quickly as we can, Cliffnotes style. Ready in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Derrick and Jodi are in power and must pick 4 names to put up for nomination that the House will then vote on to send into 2 people into the arena to face off with Nehemiah and Ayanna. Trying to play nice, those 2 meet with Ayanna first, who they ask who she wants. She could care less. Then they meet with Nehemiah. He could care more. He wants Ryan and Cancun Derrick to be the 2 nominated males. Before those nominations are made, however, Steve decides to make a joke about Extreme Derrick's outfit, which rubs him the wrong way, and eventually leads to Extreme Derrick and Jodi putting Steve up along with Cancun Derrick and Leah and Casey as the 4 nominated names. The game sets in as the House sees the nominated 4 and realizes that people will in fact be going home quite soon. Nehemiah very upset with Extreme Derrick for not giving him the 2 names he wanted and vows revenge. Deliberation then takes place, and in a landslide vote, Leah is voted in over Casey, as is Cancun Derrick over Steve. To get the vibe back to positive, the whole house, they go to prom. Literally, they hold a prom outside by the pool. Everyone gets dressed up. They play some great music. They're having a great time. They act like they're 17 again. And we get not only the return of Anit, Cancun Derrick's Tina alter ego, but the grand entrance of Tundra, Tyler's, as he says, second cousin from his grandmama's side. You've heard the rumors, and yeah, they're true. That is just amazing stuff. But the party, while being wild and fun, it eventually takes a turn for the heartbreaking when we learn that Cancun Derrick had tragedy strike his family literally days or the day before he was to leave to film this show when his younger sister took her own life. After some weighty scenes of the Cancun crew plus Ryan giving support to Derrick, everyone gets their minds back right. They get ready to head on to the arena for the first time of the season. There in the arena, we learn that Nehemiah and Derrick will face off solo, as will Leah and Ayanna, in a solo game called Dead Weight. 3 coffins, all with the puzzle on the outside. You figure out the puzzle, you open up the coffin, you take the chain out, attach it to the coffin, drag that 300-pound thing across the arena to the other side where you hook it onto a pole. The first to get all 3 of their coffins across the other side wins. The men go first, and in a very, very tight battle, Nehemiah edges out Cancun Derrick, sending him home. And then on the female side, Ayanna puts in a performance for the ages and just dominates, just whips those coffins across the arena, sending Leah home, but not before a touching moment where Ayanna helps Leah finish the thing she had started, celebrates with her, celebrates the 2 of them together. It's very great stuff. And then the episode ends with us learning that the winners of the elimination will earn a life shield to keep themselves or possibly a friend safe from the next elimination. Whew. All right, so that's what went down on this episode. Now, let's rewind all the way to the beginning of all that and talk about some of the biggest storylines that went down throughout this episode. To the storylines we go. And while we were just going to say the storylines now, we do have 5 of them that we'd like to talk through a little bit, similar to last week when we wanted to call this segment 5 Big Things. We don't want to limit ourselves to 5. We also don't want to force ourselves to have 5 if some episodes don't necessarily have 5 different ones to talk about. This one just happens to still have 5. So rebranding, begotten, we're still talking about 5 kind of different storylines, people, or things that happen. Let's start with the first one. And it is the sad one, and to some degree, the inspiring one, the heartfelt, emotional crux of the episode. There was a few of them. This was a very emotionally heavy episode for sure of television and of the challenge. The first one is Derrick, Cancun Derrick, and as we said last week, I don't know that we fully decided it during the preview podcast, but as we said last week, I hate doing the Derrick C, Derrick K, or Derrick, and you know which one I'm talking about because of what we're talking about. So we went with Cancun Derrick and Extreme Derrick to reference the seasons they originally came from. So Cancun Derrick, we get the news kind of midway through, a little over maybe midway through the episode that, they're having the prom. He's over, and clearly Jeanne, one of his best friends, who we find out, I'm sure this obviously came up on their season of Real World, but I did watch that season, but it's been so long, and I don't think I've ever rewatched any of that other than when it originally aired. And maybe it came up during their seasons where they overlapped on the challenge, but it was news to me. I knew that they were obviously very good friends and still remained very good friends from their episode or their season of The Real World, but it was brought back to the forefront that those two had a relationship even before that, that Janae literally lived, or was it vice versa? One of them lived on the other one's floor. Oh yeah, Janae lived on Derrick's, like in his like guest room or on his floor of his apartment for a little while, back like almost in like high school days or super young days before they ever were on The Real World together. So they go way, way back. She can tell something is obviously wrong amongst this unbelievably and awesome party. That yes, this guy got voted in, but there's something a lot more than that going on. And she eventually gets him to come forward with the knowledge that the day before he left to film this show, his younger sister took her own life, and that the family experienced this tragedy, and that both his family members encouraged him to still come, and he believed, knowing what a fan she was of him on these shows, that she would want him to still come. So he came to do this, and in doing so was a way for him to kind of to grieve from a distance and to just kind of get out of that situation a little bit and get away from all this heartbreak that was going on and do something. And he wanted, he was getting thrown into elimination so quickly made him think about the fact that, was this worth it? Is this going, if I go home now, was this going to be worth it? Like I need this to mean something, that I came here and that I still went through with doing this. And it's heartbreaking stuff, obviously, first and foremost. And hats off to him for being able to share and discuss. I mean, he's keeping it to himself for a while here, but then once Janae knows, he talks about it in confessionals over and over, and is comfortable with it being, a storyline here. And, hats off to him for the way he's handling all this. The way he talks about it is definitely emotionally gripping television for sure. And very, very, very good to see that, he is one of the people in the house that has a good collection of people, that he has strong relationships there. So he does have a really, really solid support group in the house that we see from, what I'm kind of calling Cancun crew plus Ryan. He's kind of a part of that with Jasmine, Janae, and Derrick. And then Ryan is kind of the fourth member of that little crew that obviously has, long-standing friendships with each other and has each other's back. We get the emotionally heavy scene of the four of them, talking about this in one of the bedrooms, and going through it and supporting their friend. And, there's not a lot to be said about it other than, a lot of courage coming from Derrick, a really good showing, and a really just emotionally heavy and gripping, television that we get, out of this horrible, horrible tragedy that has occurred. So all of our thoughts and, best wishes to the family that I'm sure continues to grieve and mourn and move on from what has happened. But that is definitely one of the biggest storylines of the episode. And then, Derrick eventually does lose the elimination after putting up an awesome fight. It really pretty much comes down to, of the two puzzles, there's only two. One of them they had no puzzle on. We're not going to really necessarily recap the actual arena game on its own in particular, but kind of a little here with Derrick, and then we'll talk about some of the other people that took part in it as well and mentioned it there. But Derrick's part in the arena is he crushes it from the standpoint of dragging those things. Which, did they really weigh 300 pounds? When he said 300 pounds, was there? I know the chains were different lengths. Would they all weigh the same? I don't know. I was confused by that. I mean, 300 pounds through sand is like a lot, and I would be surprised if any of the people on this show were just like pretty quickly, certainly as quickly as Ayanna eventually dragged these things across, carrying 300 pounds. But regardless, Derrick crushes that part of it. He's doing that, does plenty well there. Where the loss really occurs, the real difference between he and Nehemiah pretty much comes down to the one puzzle. The first one Derrick does, which then ends up being, I guess the first one Nehemiah does too. No, because they end up on the last one at the same time. So yeah, the first one, both of them do the kind of enlarged phone screen where you have to count how many fours are on the phone screen, I believe was the goal of it. It takes him, he does the smart thing, goes slow and steady of like, hey, if you make a mistake, you got to do this multiple times. So like, let's get it right the first time, but seems to recount multiple times anyways without going for some checks. And that little extra time he spends on that kind of ends up being the difference. He's 2/3 of the way across the arena with his third coffin when Nehemiah gets there. So a great showing from him. Even in just 2 episodes back, proving without a doubt, the all-star caliber that he brings to this show from his appearances as a NEET to all, great confessionals across 2 episodes, bringing this emotional weight to this episode and just the courage to be there in the first place. So hats off to Derrick. He was definitely a big storyline there and is now one of the first 2 people eliminated and going home. Let's move on to our second storyline then. That would be Derrick and Jodi, Extreme Derrick, who I guess for this will be the last episode we'll have to necessarily call him Extreme Derrick, but Road Rules Extreme, Derrick Kaczynski, and Road Rules Extreme for cast member as well. Jodi, they won Daily Challenge on the first episode. They are now in the power seat, and couple things on them. They try to play nice with everyone, which, across the board, you're the first one in power on a season of the challenge. Yeah, the MO in that position is play nice unless you have a very, very obvious vendetta, rival, whoever that you might want to immediately go for. You're just going to try to play nice, which is what they tried to do. And for their part, by the end of the episode, it may seem like it didn't 100% work with Nehemiah being so upset at Extreme Derrick, but they did everything they could do and everything kind of right to play nice with everyone. They go to Ayanna first. They're like, hey, anyone you want specifically. Ayanna, of course, is just the badass that she pretends to be here, is just like, nah, it doesn't matter. I think she says in confessional, I never got to choose who I ran against in track. So why would I choose who I go against here? I'm just going to whoop them, whoever it is. Awesome attitude. Way to go. And also, while she might just be doing it because that's truly how she feels and she couldn't give an F, there's also a little bit of gamesmanship that goes to it, whether she knows it or not, a strategy of, no, I don't want to tell you my cards. I don't want to let you play my cards for me. I want you to play your cards. I'll deal with whatever they are, but like, you're the one in power. You're the one going to get your hands a little dirty here, not me. So very, very good on her. Then they go to Nehemiah, who, of course, he's happy to tell him, I want Ryan. And Extreme Derrick's like, all right, what about anyone else? We got to say 2 names, if Ryan and who else? And he says, Cancun Derrick. He's very adamant about both. He eventually gets very, very upset that Derrick doesn't give him both. We'll talk about that in a moment when we talk more about Nehemiah in general. But so they're trying to play nice. They're like, all right, you 2 are going in. Who do you want? We will maybe give you at least, in the case of Nehemiah, they're like, we'll give you one of the 2. That seems like the easiest way to not just say to those 2 people, hey, we gave whoever he wanted. We just put those people in. Say, no, we wanted to be nice and say, who do you want? We'll put one of them in, and then we will pick another person, which they pick Steve, because of his comments on Derrick's outfit, which we will talk about in Best Fit Award. But Steve goes in a little bit, just stops Derrick mid-hallway and is like, man, what are you wearing? Not realizing that Extreme Derrick is going to be a little upset about this. Like, what the fuck, dude? I thought this was cool. And also, like, even if you don't think it's cool, why you just randomly stopping me to talk shit for a second? Like, that's not cool. So Steve gets thrown in. That's hilarious. But also is a crutch that they can stand on when it's really more of Steve hasn't been back to this show and maybe the longest of any of the guys, only ever did the one, has the least amount of connection. So he and eventually Leah are the kind of it's almost as if there's no rookies on this season, but the most equivalent to a rookie of like, they know the least amount of people. They've done this the least amount of times. It's been the longest since they've been here. They're the easiest pick for us to do the first time around. And the final thing then on Derrick and Jodi, I guess outside of, they just very quickly realized being in power is not always the best place to be. At least being in direct power is not always the best place to be, especially the first one in the game. First one to have to kind of take control, get their hands dirty, make some feelings known. Jodi, though, which does stand up. One thing that hasn't changed about her, she liked playing the game always, and that she was very competitive and wanted to win and was very good at that and did win this game before multiple times. But she always before didn't like when she had to play the kind of political strategic game, and it comes up again here. They do the kind thing of after they put the names on the board, they want to go around and try to find those people and tell them. And they go and they find Cancun Derrick, and they have a conversation with he and Ryan, and Jasmine and Janae are there. And they're like, hey, Derrick, you're going in. Nehemiah said he wanted to eat one of you two. And, we're a little closer with Ryan. So we wanted to give Nehemiah one just because we're trying to do this as kind of fairly as possible. And so we chose to keep Ryan out and Derrick throw you in. And Jodi starts crying during it, and they're legitimate tears, and it's genuine emotion. I fully believe from her of like, I don't like this. I don't like having this power. I don't like having to come tell you that you're going in and that it was my choice to send you in. I don't like any of this, but it is backfiring a little on them because also totally in their right is Jasmine and Janae, who both in the moment give some looks and as well as Ryan. And then in confessionals, all kind of say something to the same effect of like, don't bring those tears around us right now. Like, you did this and like own it. That's fine. Like, don't tell us you're so sad. Guess who's sad? We are, our friends going in. So interesting to see if this being the first in power and a team that if they continue to pair up or whatever could eventually be in power a good amount in this game, if how they're able to handle that, how if they become public enemy number one right away because of exerting this power that is forced upon them by their victory. Then storyline number 3, the biggest, best part of the whole episode. It was teased in the next week on. It was also, if you are watching Spies, Lies, and Allies, at the end of it, they do a little clip from the episode that's about to drop of All Stars, and they let it be known that the prom was about to happen, but the prom happened, and the prom was amazing. Just amazing. This is what we come to All Stars for. They did this multiple times on the first season. They've already shown it's not just do it this time, but I bet they do multiple big old themed parties like this. We're clearly ahead in advance of coming to the show. Once the cast knows who else is being there, they've communicated and they said, hey, on All Stars 1, it was like, hey, we're going to do a big 90s party. Like immediately when everyone's still there, big old 90s party, dress appropriately. This one, they clearly said like, we're having a prom, dress appropriately, bring something for that. And we get, everyone's looking good. The old school MTV shirt from MJ, the wig on Darrell that actually kind of looks a little bit similar to the hair we saw in a clip put out last week of Darrell's original casting video. So there was some interesting callback to that. If you saw that clip, and if you haven't seen that, go on the Challenge's YouTube account and look up a pretty recent video of All Stars 2 cast reacts to former casting videos, and they watch Darrell's, and you've got to see it. That's all there is to say. But you also got to see Tundra, because we get Tundra, which is Tyler's drag alter ego. We knew coming into the season it was made pretty known, at least if you're as big a Tyler fan as I happen to be here and follow him or saw any of the preview content he was a part of or little interviews he did here or there. We knew that we're pretty confident this is not going to be the only time that we get a Tundra sighting, but it's the first one. And it's amazing. Everything about it is perfect. As Tyler says, let me make sure I pull this back up to make sure I get it all completely right. Tundra, according to Tyler, is, second cousin from the grandmama's side. If you've heard the rumors, trust me, they're true. Good intentions, horrible with boundaries. All of that will come up, and you'll get to hear him actually say that in the quote of the week nominees, because that certainly will be one of them, and best moment of the week. Also, we will be talking about this again, but Tundra makes her grand entrance into the party. The whole thing's lit. The music that they're doing in the whole thing is amazing, and the only other thing I have to say about prom is, can we have more, please? I very much appreciate that the main segment of it was the entrance of Tundra. Great. Loved every bit of it. We'll take more Tundra anytime it's available. But also, we got the different montages before and after that of everyone having a good time, everyone dancing. I wanted to see a little more of everyone in all these different outfits. We get Katie telling Nehemiah he smells good and him responding with, this is the stuff they use to mate elephants, which is a hell of a line. It is very funny. The more of that, the better. So keep feeding it to us. That's why we've all been pining for this All-Stars content, and they're delivering it. So, you want to bump these episodes up from 40 minutes to that full hour and a half. You don't have to add any more daily challenges or eliminations. Just show us uncut footage of this party, please, and thank you. Then fourth storyline, fourth thing or person. This one is a person. That would be Leah. We get a decent amount of Leah in this episode. She does, of course, eventually goes home. Couple notes on her performance or just the parts of the story that were Leah-centric in this episode. The first one is early on. It is made known, and again, early in the episode is when the beginning of the who's going to get voted in. And she states in confessional that, she feels like she's at a disadvantage because all these other people, have done all these seasons and have these relationships, and like, what was she supposed to do? And she does eventually in person, in confessional and in person to other people once she is actually nominated or voted in, make some very, very funny comments to the other cast about, sorry, I didn't send you that TikTok a couple months ago that I can reference. Hey, am I supposed to just get on Instagram and always, like everything all of y'all are doing and, kiss all of y'all's ass all the time on social media? She has a bunch of funny comments. But the one thing is she does legitimately seem to feel like this is kind of bullshit, that I've got this disadvantage. Like everyone else has all these friends. And I've got to say that one, obviously that's a disadvantage. Yes, this game is built on social and political relationships within the house and very much outside of the game to be brought into the house. But it seems kind of fair that, with respect to Leah, and I will also even, lump in with it, so it's not just saying it about one person here, to a Steve or an Ayanna or Sophia or Kendall back on, All-Stars 1, or Tech on All-Stars 1, or a lot of these people that we bring back the challenge All-Stars. And as I said in my preview and others have said in many different forms and places, the all-star cast isn't necessarily built on all of the people we would necessarily think would be all-stars or have had all-star-like runs on the challenge. And, some of them, like Aaliyah, have only done the one season. And to me, if we're going to bring those people back and give them a shot to kind of prove, whatever spark we saw, whatever thing there was that was like, there's an all-star caliber story or person here, bring them back. It seems kind of fair that they have a bit of a disadvantage because of that very same fact that, if, maybe if I'm a Derrick Kaczynski in the house, and I'm like, hey, I was the face of this franchise for a moment in time there. I've won multiple of these. I did, I was on the show for a decade. I talk about it for a living now. Like, I'm an all-star, and I don't feel like everyone here is on that same level. Then it feels kind of fair that those that maybe aren't quite on that level and have something to prove still in the all-star category come in with that inherent disadvantage of, you don't have the relationships, you don't have the experience on the show that some of the others do. So that feels fair to me. It is obvious and it is a disadvantage for sure, but it feels like kind of a fair way to, a baked-in disadvantage that kind of evens things out in a weird way for me. I may be wrong. You may think this is bullshit. I love Leah. I didn't want to see her get voted in just because she doesn't know as many of these people. But I think that's just the ground that those people that come in with limited exposure to this world and these people, it's the ground they're going to walk on. Again, her comments about TikTok and Instagram were hilarious, though. Then as far as the elimination is considered, the moment with her and Ayanna, we'll talk about it, best moment. It was very, very great at the end. Gotta say, as someone who is a kayak professional in the summer times and who is around carabiners a good amount, be in that line of work, not being able to open and clip on the carabiner was a tough look for our girl, Leah. Yeah, that was a tough one because while it kind of went by relatively quickly in the time of the show, in the edit of the show, and obviously Ayanna was putting on a heroic, superhuman type of effort of how fast she was pulling those coffins across that thing. She did do a puzzle, pulled the coffin, did a puzzle, and started pulling another coffin in the time it took Leah to get a carabiner on. So, that's where she lost that one. Whether she could have not pulled those coffins, it was not going to matter with the opponent she was going up against. Ayanna was winning versus anyone, male or female, in that house with the performance she put on. But the carabiner thing was pretty tough. All right, our fifth and final storyline, major one to talk about, is another person who got a lot of time in this episode. That is Nehemiah, who we incorrectly on the review preview podcast said we thought would be going home. We just felt not necessarily because of any of his abilities by any means. It just, for some reason, we were just feeling like the edit was going like we're not going to get a lot of Nehemiah here, and we want to get as much of him as we can in the time we have him. But instead, it looks like he's just going to be legit, maybe the focal point. If there is if you could say one person is the singular focal point of the season, it might very well be him. We start with the he and Derrick thing. They teased it. They definitely did have some friction on All Stars 1. I don't necessarily remember them specifically having like this horrible friction back at any time they ever would have done a challenge together way back in the day. Everyone kind of had friction with Nehemiah to a lot of times seemingly unfairly, or especially like Duel 2. It was just always kind of like, why is this guy the outcast? Did you guys just decide someone had to be an outcast so you could like label someone that and it could be a story thing and you just chose him? What was going on? It was kind of weird and unfair. But they definitely had a little friction. They seem to have been edit-wise trying to play that up in our first episode. But now, second episode, Nehemiah clearly just doesn't like Derrick. And Derrick tried to do the political thing and say, who do you want? I'm not guaranteeing I give you these exact two people, but just tell us who you want. And then he does give you one of the two, and you do end up going against and beating one of those two. But Nehemiah does not take it well at all. He is no chill this episode. He is fired up. The moment he doesn't see Ryan and Derrick as the two names up there, he's not quite on a warpath, but he's kind of like, he's maybe announcing that a war is about to take place and that he just needs a little more training, or they're just getting the troops ready, or what, because he lets it be known that eventually a war between he and Derrick will be had. And a couple amazing things that he does. One, he immediately, while everyone else is outside having some drinks, chilling by the pool bar, Nehemiah, all upset, decides everyone else is already out there. Why don't I take my shirt off and go get a hard boxing workout in right in front of everyone? Just, there's maybe some ulterior motives to wanting to do that in front of everyone. I found the entire thing hilarious. But also, my man's hitting that bag hard. My man's shredded up, looking good. So hats off to you. It was just kind of funny. He is then very direct, very aggressive in his campaigning style of walking over. Once it's Steve and Derrick, he's upset that it's not Ryan and Derrick. He doesn't want to go against Steve. He's mad at extreme Derrick, and so he's going to take that out by demanding to go against Cancun Derrick, and lets it be known, I've played this game in the past, very straightforward, very kind, very nice, whatever. Never worked for me. We're getting cutthroat this time around. So he walks up, to a group of 6 or 7 people sitting outside who are just having a nice chat. And in comes Nehemiah, breathing heavy, clearly like kind of on edge, hyped up, and like, hey, what's up? And he's like, I will not go against Steve. I am going against Derrick. You will all say Derrick's name. Thank you. Good night. And he leaves. And, it's one of those where I applaud the strategy, just maybe not the whole execution. The strategy of, I totally agree with him in his confessional when he's like, hey, if you don't say what you want in this game, you're not going to get anything close to it. Saying what you want doesn't guarantee it, but I've learned the lesson. Like, I'm going to say what I want when I want to say it, and all for that. I think there was a way to, while it eventually worked, everyone does, uphold the friendships and say, Nehemiah said this is who he wants, so I'm going to vote for him, and Derrick gets sent in. But I think he could have done it maybe without raising the intensity level of the game for everyone else. Because in this house where it seems as we did, one of our predictions we did get right on the review preview is we got many, many quotes of the game is setting in type of quotes and confessionals and things, and everyone realizing, yeah, we're not here just to have fake proms. We are actually competing, and some of us will be going home rather quickly. And I feel like that's going to kind of rock the house more than a regular season of the challenge would. And I feel like that's where maybe Nehemiah's strategy of being this open and being this kind of aggressive with his game plan and with his strategy in a regular challenge house might be the right strategy. He might have adapted to the correct thing for him to do if this was a regular season. But I think you don't want to be the one that's kind of turning up the stress, the pressure of the game in this house right away. You don't want to be the one that seems to be standing at that valve. That valve is going to turn no matter what. That pressure is going to keep getting bigger and bigger. People are going to know it more and more. There's going to be less and less nights of let's have a fake prom and all get dressed up and drunk and have a great time. But you don't want to be the one, if that knob's already going to turn, if that pressure's already going to go up, do you want to be the one that seems to be or is easily placed, whether fairly or unfairly placed, as the person who's kind of turning that pressure up the quickest? I don't think you want to do that. So that's my take on that. We already mentioned that this is the stuff they used to mate elephants. That line killed us, absolutely killed us. You get some Anchorman callbacks there of Paul Rudd's Anchorman character and all of his different colognes and things that he shows off. So I wonder if that was a play on that. Either way, it was hilarious. And I really want to know what he was actually wearing in that moment. Maybe he'll share that on his Instagram or somewhere now that the episode's out. And then the final thing about Nehemiah, at the end of the episode, he wins and he references himself as the people's champ, which this is not meant as some shots at Nehemiah, who I very much like. I one of few people, I guess, as far as people within the reason I think I kind of chuckle at the People's Champs thing is from a fan perspective, we'll see. But from a in-the-house perspective, the entire Austin cast, as much as Nehemiah and Melinda on this current season, way after the fact, might be shedding this, the Austin cast was hated by everyone. Seemingly very unfairly, because it was just instant. It was like, we saw you on TV and everyone loved your season of The Real World, therefore all of us hate you coming into the challenge. But everyone hated the Austin. Anyone that was associated with Real World Austin was just despised in challenge houses for time after time. So for one of them now, years later, to be saying the people's champ, we'll see. Again, we like Nehemiah. I like Nehemiah. But I don't know if I would go so far to call him the people's champ, as far as, who the crowd, who the fan base of the show might be most rooting for here on the male side, but we shall see. I could very well be proved wrong. He could be proved right, or it could just be somewhere in the middle that to his fans he is and deserving. He got the win, looked awesome doing it. He's definitely holding his own politically and socially, and he's definitely been, if there's a star of the show through 2 episodes, Tina was the MVP of episode 1 for sure, but we didn't get almost any Tina this episode. Nehemiah has definitely been the focal point of this episode and this season, 2 episodes in. That is all of our storylines. All right, let's move into the hardware and revisit a few of those storylines and a few of those touch points by way of giving out some awards. 4 pieces of hardware to give out. And same to last week, we've got our new category, new to this season of the challenge, Best Fit. We've also got Best Moment, Best Quote, and an episode MVP. Let's start with that Best Fit. And with respect to Tundra, who was looking great on prom night, with respect to MJ and Darrell, whose outfits in brief glimpses we were very much enjoying and appreciating on prom night, and everyone else that was wearing amazing stuff this week. The Best Fit award for episode 2 has to go to Derrick for his single pattern short button-up shirt combo that became an actual storyline and plot in the episode. Whether you love it or hate it, Tech thought it was dope. Pretty much everyone else said they hated it or made fun of it. We got jokes from Kahada. We got jokes from Jasmine. We got jokes in person from Steve, who took the brunt of it because he did his in person to Derrick's face, versus when asked about it in confessional, now that it was a story, everyone else kind of did it behind his back. And maybe even Tech might even, whether he thought it was dope or not, might have just been, trying to pick his man up after, never wanted to see someone's fit get disrespected, just being the good friend and saying, hey, don't listen to that guy. That's dope. Keep doing you. But sorry for moving the camera there as I'm talking. But whatever you think of it, it's got to be the best fit of the episode, because it's pretty crazy that that an outfit almost cost someone their life in the game, when it almost ends up Steve going, he doesn't get that close to losing the vote, but he gets put up for vote, and he gets put up for vote in Derrick's mind, thinking that he will kind of suffer the same fate that Leah does, of if we put this guy up for vote, he doesn't have the connections in the house Cancun Derrick does, and Steve will go in and go home. And so it almost gets him sent home, which means it wins the award of best fit for Derrick. Plus, I actually did legitimately like it. And he wears a similar, seems like he might have brought a few of these types of outfits with him, of the short button-up shirt combo, single pattern, top to bottom. I thought it was fly. So hats off to Derrick, fit of the week. Now, best moment. We've mentioned both of them. There are two nominees. There is the entrance of Tundra. We said we were hopeful for, on our review preview pod, we were hopeful for more Tyler. And in that, we'll take Tundra, we'll take Tyler, we'll take them both, we'll take either one. And it was all great. And, we said it pretty much all before, but the whole thing was amazing. The introduction and his confessional explaining Tundra was just spot on and hilarious and fun. And seemed like the absolute life of the party. And as we said in the very intro to this podcast, our vote for prom queen is definitely to Tundra. Second nominee, then, at the end of the episode, we get the Ayanna, Leah in the arena. Ayanna just smokes that thing one more time, we got to say. Just unbelievable. One, she did have the best strategy, and whether she had it from the start or it was from watching the guys go first, but Derrick and Nehemiah both will hold the end of the rope with two hands and pull, moving backwards, and just kind of do one little tug at a time, where Ayanna's like, nope, throwing this thing over my shoulder and just sled walking it basically forward, and also holding very high on the chain so she could almost lift the whole thing up off the ground, reducing the friction, making it easier to pull through the sand. So just very smart about it, very badass about it, very strong about it. She dominated, but then after dominating and knowing that Leah was still struggling to get that first coffin even across the arena, goes back in. Those two had a nice moment at the prom the day before, or I assume the day before, in that talking about, we're both here, we're both single moms, we're proving something to ourselves, no matter who wins tomorrow, like we're both winners, and they have a little bonding moment. So then Ayanna beats her, goes right back to her, is like, whoa, Leah, what are you doing? You're finishing this. You're proving something to yourself. Get back on that chain. I'll help you. We're pulling this across, and it's fantastic. It's very, very good sportsmanship. It's very good just being a great human being. It's a wonderful moment. The entire cast gets super choked up and emotional about it. It, is super duper touched by it, which, I'm there with you about 90% of the way. It seemed, like all things on this and all reality television, maybe a little overdone with how many people were in tears over this, but it was really, really awesome. And it was really emotional and cool. And so it is a nominee for Moment of the Week. So not, no shots at it, just maybe 10% overdone in the crowd reaction, but 100% amazing in Ayanna and Leah in that moment together. But as awesome as it was, there's no way I'm giving this award to anyone but Tyler, but Tundra. Tundra gets the best moment of the episode. Really, the prom in general, that entire scene was just fantastic. That's why we're here for this show. Then let's talk best quote. We've got 4 nominees. They come first from Kahada, who, of all the people that makes fun of Derrick's outfit, I found his to be the one I actually did laugh out loud at. So here is Kahada with his commentary on Derrick's fit of the week.
It looks like he's wearing the sheets off a 10-year-old bed or something like that.
What are you thinking?
Then we've got Jasmine. Oh my God, it's so good to have Jasmine on this show. Can we just make she's one of those people that I would be cool if any season of the challenge, they're like, all right, we brought 24 people here to compete. We also brought these other 6 people who are just going to be here living with you and doing confessionals and entertaining. They're not actually taking part in the game itself because we don't want them to be at risk of going home. We want them here every single episode. Jasmine would be first ballot for, can Jasmine just be in the house with them and be a part of their lives and be a part of our lives without being at risk of only being there for X amount of episodes and having to, make a final to be there till the end? Because she's amazing. So good to have her back. And second nominee for quote of the week, when presented by Extreme Derrick and Jodi, that her guy, Derrick, Cancun Derrick, and their entire alliance by default is being threatened, she lets them know that that's going to be a big fucking problem in only the way Jasmine can say it. So let's hear it from her.
Coming after Cancun is not what you want to do, Nehemiah. Now you're coming for my family. Now we have a really big fucking problem, and I'm the wrong bitch.
Third nominee is the same that just won Best Moment, but within the entire Tundra moment is the initial explanation of who Tundra is, where Tundra comes from. And we referenced it earlier, and we did a horrible job, so why would we not give you the chance to hear it from Tundra herself, from Tyler himself, and explain where and who this character is? So take it away, Tyler.
I decided to turn it up a notch. This is a challenge all-stars. So I decided to invite my second cousin from my grandmama's side, Tundra. If you've heard the rumors, trust me, they're true. Good intentions, horrible with boundaries.
Fourth and final nominee, I hope it'll be plenty easy enough to hear. I'll make sure I kind of turn the volume way up on it. But in the field, as you know, if you've listened to these podcast recaps for a while now, I love an in the field quote. I kind of give it extra little bonus points over a confessional one where maybe you've been thinking about something for a few days before you record those. But in the field, Ayanna, during her amazing dominant performance in the arena, her self-talk is through the roof. A plus self-talk, self-belief. And the whole time, as she's dragging those coffins like they are absolute nothing on her back across that arena, she is talking herself up. And at one point, she just starts repeating the mantra, powerful as fuck. And I'm about to say this to myself over and over and over every time I work out for a long time to come. But let's it was a little quiet in the episode, so hopefully I can find a way to make this loud enough that you can hear it. But let's hear Ayanna and a little bit of that self-talk from her dominating performance.
You're there! Powerful as fuck! Powerful as fuck!
Out of wins.
Powerful as fuck! Powerful as fuck!
That quote was itself powerful as fuck, but it is not going to be our winner. Our winner here, there's a good chance that any episode she's on, she could very well is an odds-on favorite to win quote of the week in any season, especially this one. But Jasmine, big fucking problem, is the winner of quote of the week. And finally, an episode MVP. Multiple people getting votes. We've got to shout out Tyler for the final time, and Tundra getting some votes for MVP and production, ceding to the wishes of this podcaster and giving us some more Tyler in the form of Tundra on this episode. Thank you for that. Got some votes, not enough to win, but got some votes. Ayanna got some votes. My goodness, for the final time, we will say that was some quick work of some big old heavy coffins that woman did. She got some votes. Nehemiah and Extreme Derrick are, front and center for large parts of this episode, but the best they could do is maybe muster up a vote here or there. The winner of the episode MVP is Derrick, Cancun Derrick. And while sad to see him go at the end, definitely proved his all-star status in the 2 episodes here. Definitely, heavy emotional stuff we're dealing with his story within this episode. And there couldn't be, performed very admirably in the elimination. There couldn't be any other MVP for the episode than than Derrick. So we say goodbye to him, but on the way out, he at least brings home some hardware. He gets that episode MVP. So that's that. Those are our 4 awards. Now, to finish this out, let's talk our power rankings. There's been some changes in the power rankings on both the male and the female side. So let's update those. Let's add a prediction to our list, and then we'll get the hell out of here. To the power rankings we go. And with those power rankings, we're going to do the individual power rankings, a male list, a female list. And for the time being, while there's still so many people left, we're not going to go 1 through 12. We're just going to have a top 5. And if you're not in top 5, you're unranked for the time being. But in that top 5, let's talk. Last week we did females first, so this week let's talk males first. Our top 5 on the male side is Darrell, Brad, Kahutta, Tyler, and then tied for 5th, we have Derrick, Nehemiah. We'll explain momentarily. Darrell holds down the number 1 spot. Derrick was number 2 last week, slides down to number 5, and we move Brad, Kahutta, and Tyler up 1 spot each, respectively. I just see Darrell and Brad as the guys to beat on the male side from an athletic standpoint, from an experience in this game standpoint, and from a the relationships they have standpoint. I think Kahutta, I put him and Tyler then next because both, they've got a lot to offer by way of the physical sports, the mental sport elements, and the social political elements. I think everyone, is going to very much like them. I just think they're in solid spots for the time being. And then Derrick, who I had second after that good performance last week and the potential kind of long-term pairing with Jodi, who, spoiler, is the top still on the female power rankings. I dropped him down to 5 just because, and I match him with Nehemiah. I put them tied because it's very obvious we're going to get some payoff at some point to this whole Derrick Nehemiah thing. So one of them, whoever survives this kind of tit for tat that we might get between them, this little rivalry that's been brewing, whoever survives that, it's going to be in a good spot. But both of them do have that threat of another good player who's clearly kind of looking at them. Even if Derrick's not looking at Nehemiah that way, Nehemiah sure is towards him, which means eventually he's going to have to look that same way back, whether he likes to or not. So Darrell, Brad, Kahutta, Tyler, and then Derrick and Nehemiah tied in that 5th spot. On the female side, kind of a similar shakeup. We have the same top 2. Jodi, Kendall are at the top. That's number 1 and 2. Jodi and Kendall, I think that's where we pretty much had them going into the season after episode 1. I just think physically they're bringing the most to the game on the female side, and they both don't seem to have any, they might be physically the strongest in the house, but they also have no super weakness or anything on the mental side of the actual challenges or eliminations. And then politically, socially, there's no one other than, you would have maybe said Jasmine and Janae had the best standing in the house from having the 3 of them there from their original season, super tight bonds, plus having been on seasons with most of these people. They probably had the best situation coming in, but not some overwhelming one that would, vault them to the top just by default. So Jodi and Kendall are 1 and 2. And then Tina was 3rd. She falls to 5th, and we bump up Katie and Janelle. So we got Jodi, Kendall, Katie, Janelle, Tina. And that was strictly because on the next week on, it looked like some people are going to start looking at Tina as a threat or as an annoyance or in one way or the other, potentially wanting her out of the house. So we bump her down a little bit if we're starting to see some signs that she may become a target. And we just kind of like where Katie and Janelle both stand, what they offer to the game, and where they stand in the social standings of the house. So Jodi, Kendall, Katie, Janelle, Tina, and Darrell, Brad, Kahutta, Tyler, Derrick, Nehemiah tie for 5th. Those are our power rankings. As for our predictions, well, we have the first one wrong of the year. That's fun. We got our first one wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Prior to the season, we went hard on the predictions in the Preview Extravaganza podcast, and we said the first 2 people going home would be Steve and Sophia, and that is wrong. So 0 for 1 on that. But also on those prior to the season predictions, we said the finalists would be Brad, Darrell, Tyler, Kahutta, Ryan on the guys' side, all still in play. Jodi, Kendall, Jasmine, Janelle, Melinda on the female side, all still in play. And we said the 2 winners would be Brad and Jodi. One of them, maybe both of them, if 2 people end up winning, if that's a twist near the end. Those are still in play. So we got the first to go home wrong, but so far, after the first 2 people go home, haven't lost any of our finalist predictions or our winner predictions. Then After each episode this season on the episode recaps, at least for the first 5 or 6 episodes, first half of the season, we are going to make a season-long prediction. Our first one after episode 1 was that we are on or in the water for 50% of the daily challenges. And so far, we didn't get another one, so we're still 1 for 1 on that. So we're at 100% right now, so that one's looking solid. Our second one, though, the one that we are going to add is going to be this. That is that we learned this episode about the life shield and that the winners of the elimination would get a life shield that, while not explained perfectly, seems to be that they can only use it the very next nominations because then someone else will go in and win and have a life shield. So I think there's only going to ever be the 2 life shields in play, but that they can use it to save themselves or someone that is nominated from going in. And we are going to go ahead and predict that over 50% of the life shields will be used. Unlike All-Stars 1, unlike life shields of the past, way back on, Inferno seasons and things like that, when they've had a version of this lifesaver, life shield, they've called it different things, Clear Eyes, branded lifesaver, something one of those seasons. But they haven't always been used all that much in the past. I think that changes this season. I think over 50% of the time that life shield will get used, to at least 1 out of every 2 people every single week, I think are going to use it. So that is prediction number 2. We add it to the list. And with that, we will see if we can get any of those right. We will see if we get any of our finalists or winners right. It would be pretty amazing if we went 10 for 10. I highly doubt the possibility of that, but you never know. Maybe it can happen. Maybe it can. So, with that, that concludes this podcast, this episode of All Stars, and this week of Challenge Historians podcast. It's our second week of doing 3 in 1 week. Feeling good about it. Thankfully, the voice has made it through as well. A little nervous about that. I talk longer than I probably need to on these shows, but the voice is holding up, so that's great. Thank you so much for being here and listening and following along all the content. Thank you for watching both of these amazing seasons of the challenge. Spies, Lies, and Allies has really, really picked its game up the last few episodes. All Stars has been fantastic through the first 2. So if you're not watching both, you should be. If you're not listening to both recaps, you should be doing that too. Make sure if you're on Spotify, hit follow, Apple Podcasts, hit subscribe. Thank you for doing that. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Those help in a big, big way. And I couldn't say how much each and every one of those is very appreciated and beloved by me. Thank you guys for being here so much. Follow along on Instagram at Challenge Historian. We will be back next week with all 3 podcasts. We might be back with an extra video on our YouTube between now and then, so keep a lookout for that. And otherwise, thank you all for being here. Love to all of y'all. Until next time, peace.